Hey guys, what's up? Yeah, I just thought I'd come on here. I just watched Misanthropony's Maps review on The End and Friend. And if there's one thing I've kind of mentioned before in text as well as here on video, is, everybody is basically the fact that everybody's wondering why certain episodes seem to be inconsistent or why characters seem to be out of character. And the one thing that I talked about mainly is it's the writers. Sometimes the writers basically, basically sometimes the writers prefer to have a character written up a certain way. Some writers prefer a character to be, done up a certain way. Sorry about that. They'd rather have a character done up a certain way because they feel that best represents the character. So I was just checking something there in the mirror. But they basically feel that best represents the character as who they are, and not what they're supposed to be. And when you take a look at The End and Friend, a lot of people feel that it basically was okay. It was basically mostly positive review on it by a lot of people. Some basically gave it let's say a B minus, a C plus grade. But they didn't like the fact. But the one thing that kind of held it from being a really good episode, because it was Rainbow Dash and Rarity, was the fact that the characters, after all this time, suddenly realized that, hey, why are we even friends if we have nothing in common? And the one thing that Matt pointed out was, wait a minute, so you waited for this long for them to point that out. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't seem to gel. And again, I think it's all dependent on who the writers are, because I think the writers for certain episodes, like I said, would rather have characters represented as they once were. You go back and take a look at non-compete clause earlier this season, and some would be like, that's not a good episode. Why are you even going back to this? When it comes to, Applejack and Rainbow Dash, when it comes to these two, why are you going back to that? Why are you even touching upon that? And basically the fact that I see is some people preferred that friendly rivalry of Applejack and Rainbow Dash's personalities over what they're supposed to be. And, if that's what they choose, when it comes to these two characters, and they feel that best represents who those characters are, then so be it. But when one looks at, the fact that this show, from a continuity standpoint, is supposed to evolve, that the characters are supposed to evolve with development, they're supposed to grow, and in this season kind of pass on what they've learned to the next generation, it's like what's the point of even doing that if you're just going to regress the characters? And again, I think it's just a preference. And one thing Matt pointed out in his review is it feels like that the person who wrote the episode basically was writing it like they had the intention of writing the episode as a season 1 episode, as if this is the first time anybody has ever gotten to know these characters, and they wanted to try this story arc out on them, or this little story out on them, to kind of introduce them to a new audience. And yet, I think what Matt was trying to get to when he talked about this was, you had all this time in between to do it, and now you choose the second to possibly last season to do it, and why? And again, I think it's mainly a preference choice. Now, one thing that he did bring up towards the end was the continuity. You need to have good continuity when you want to write these kind of stories. And again, I do agree with that. But it all depends on whether or not the creative staff gets in contact with whoever's going to write that episode. Whether they get in contact with Josh Haber, whether Nicole Dubach, who's executive producer, one of them, gets in contact with with Josh Haber, or Jesse McCarthy, or Joanna Christine, or whoever whoever some of the returning and newer writers are, or even tries to put down a memo for herself of how she intends to write things when it comes to episodes that she writes or she takes part in. It's kind of hard to kind of keep in contact, to remind yourself, like, okay, this is what needs to be done to keep in contact or within continuity of the show, of the story. So to me, I can understand where Map's coming from. But I think also when you look at it, even if that's the case or it's not the case, I think sometimes the writers also look at opportunities to explore things they never got to explore before. Like maybe they've had these ideas in the works over the past couple of seasons, but they just never could get them into the season they wanted to get them in. Like, who knows? Maybe End and Friend was intended for season 5 or season 6 or even season 4, but he couldn't get it in there. The writer, whoever wrote the episode, could not get it in there. That's the thing. They couldn't get in there. You take a look at one of the most praised episodes this season, Meltdown, and maybe whoever wrote that had intentions to, do that in an earlier season. They just couldn't do it. Or you take a look at some of the upcoming episodes by description and what people have seen. There's obviously had to been some kind of plan to do these, a lot sooner than later, but they just couldn't do it because already those seasons were crammed up with episodes and story arcs that they had to go with. So, in my opinion, when I look at the whole writing situation, I think it's more about keeping in contact. I think basically it comes down to keeping in contact with each other and thus allowing consistency to be kept intact. In other words, it's about keeping in touch, making sure you're passing notes along, so that if you're writing an episode, whether you're Nicole, whether you're Josh, Joanna Christine, or whoever, if you're passing notes around, if you're writing an episode, you should remember to pass notes around to remind people, hey, you got to stay in the context of the continuity of the season, and if not of the show. And I think that's the problem right there, is at times I think they're not keeping in contact with each other, and basically not keeping up with the consistency when it comes to continuity as far as the show is concerned. So, that's that, along with the fact that I think some of these were ideas they may have had planned for previous seasons that they never got to bring to fruition until now. Combined, like I said, with the fact that maybe they just are having a hard time kind of passing each other by and not passing along the notes of what needs to be done to keep the characters in context with the current season and their development over the past 7.5 seasons. Maybe it's a combination of both there. So, but yeah, I think honestly, as we approach the end of this season, if not already, depending on what country you live in, as we approach the end of this season and we go into the 9th season, hopefully come season 9, whether or not that's the last season, hopefully the writers, the creative staff will have more consistency, will be able to work off each other and keep continuity intact of what needs to be referenced, acknowledged, and not done, not done out of continuity or out of character. So, but that's all I'm going to say, guys, on that. Let me know what you all think down below. Map, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. And I will talk to you all later. God bless. Take care.